Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Purim to all the celebrators. If you have a good costume on, open your camera for a minute. Let us take your picture. There we go. Oh, good. You don't get this on any other webinar.
No. I wish I would have known. I would have put my own costume on.
Yeah, see, wasn't that in the promotionals? Okay, I think we're at 3 minutes in. I'm sure people keep joining. Feel free to keep your cameras on, and I will hand it over to Mark and Mike. And there we go. 2 more people, and let's go. Go ahead, guys. Get it started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Perry. So welcome to an HubSpot Hacks edition. Let me share my screen so we can just show everyone what we're talking about. So today we're going to be talking about get your emails delivered. Again, HubSpot Hacks is our Penguins bi-weekly RevOps webinar where we discuss different topics every 2 weeks around HubSpot and obviously around the different hubs and the different features and the different topics that we think relevant to you guys. Obviously, great getting input over time and getting requests. Today, we're going to go into how to get your emails delivered and everything around the email domain. Very happy to have Mike Donnelly, he'll introduce himself in a second, join us. Mike's been in this domain for probably close to a decade, I think we were discussing last week. Has seen everything, and just on our prep meeting last week, I already learned a few things that I really didn't know existed in this domain. So it's amazing, and I'm sure we're going to get lots of insights out of this conversation with Mike. So Mike, maybe you just introduce yourself for a few minutes and then we can kind of dive into it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and definitely appreciate you having me on. I've definitely enjoyed numerous episodes that you guys have put on, even though it's been new, especially the one with Kyle Jepson. He's always a classic character. So I'll just kind of run down. A quick background on myself. Started my career as a software engineer for a biotech company where we mapped the human genome. And then I made the jump to the dark side of sales. And I spent 13 years in technology sales. And probably one of the most valuable tools that I had in my tool belt was email. And then I just started recognizing that, geez, reaching people is just getting really, really hard. And this was dating back to, 2010, 2011, 2012. And in just every conversation I had, even with customers that were at my wedding, they were buying millions of dollars worth of equipment from me. I would say, hey, this project's getting delayed. Well, why is it getting delayed, Mike? Because you didn't respond to my email. Well, I didn't see your email. So that just kind of led to the formation of an idea. We started building 7 Cents and then ultimately landed in the HubSpot ecosystem. We were one of their first back then they called it Connect Partners, and that was back in 2015. Mark Roberge was kind of spearheading that effort, which for those that don't know Mark Roberge, he was the previous or the original CRO of HubSpot. And we've been developing on the HubSpot platform now for, now it's been about 8 years. So that's a bit of background on myself. And, as part of that 8 years, email has changed quite considerably.
Okay, great. That I think, so maybe we can kick off where I think we were talking last week. It's something that I'm hearing from our customers probably over the last couple of months. Challenges they're having, as you said, I sent you an email even to customers themselves from different platforms, whether it's from HubSpot or from sequences or directly from marketing emails. Great, you sent me an email, but I never got it. And then, okay, what do you mean you never got it? Check your spam, check your promotional inbox. No, I don't see it anywhere. So from that extreme to, hang on, it's going into one of those inboxes and so on and so forth. So I think maybe let's kick out and if you can kind of explain to the audience today how you look at email, why is it getting harder and harder? What is the environment that we're actually living in, which you enlightened me last week when we were speaking about this. I think this will be very interesting to start off with that and kind of how the ecosystem works today, because I don't think most people actually know how everything and why it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, so really happy to jump in there. You know, it's quite funny when you talk to a lot of marketers, salespeople. They're all trying to find kind of silver bullet solutions where it's like, hey, how do you get your email seen? Write a great subject line, or, you know, what's the from name? And there's all these pundits on the internet telling you all these things about that. You've got subjectline.com and, you know, write kind of like these hacky things. But if you take a step back and you really think about what is the problem of email today, look, email is not dead and email is not going anywhere. I would, you know, we can get into the whole argument around social and those types of things. But here's the fundamental problem. If you think about the barrier to entry for any organization, any marketer, any salesperson to send email, there's no barrier to entry. Like, we could all get off this Zoom conference, go sign up for Constant Contact, MailChimp, or a HubSpot free account, go pay ZoomInfo or one of the other 500 other list providers out there, buy a list of 50,000 people or 100,000 people, and within the next hour start spamming them. Well, because that barrier to entry doesn't exist, Google, Microsoft, other inbox providers, corporate filtering systems are literally waging a war on spam. And I'm not talking about the professional spammers that are trying to steal your credit card information, but rather marketers, businesses, and salespeople that are just sending lots and lots of unwanted email. And I can't tell you how many people that I talk to that say, well, Mike, I don't have a delivery problem. My HubSpot tells me that 99.8% of my emails got delivered. All that means is 99.8% of your emails didn't bounce. It does not mean that 99.8% of your emails made it to the inbox. So that is the crutch of the problem. But then there's a lot of things that go into ensuring that you have a healthy email program. And, you know, it's quite amazing to me, or funny to me, that most marketers or most organizations, they spend gobs and gobs of money on PPC, acquiring leads from all these different social advertising, and, you know, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. And to acquire a lead is not cheap. You know, you think about the cost per click and those types of things. That is truly the house that you rent. You're just renting that audience from those social providers, and then you'll be lucky if you get email addresses. And then you got to think about, are those email addresses that I'm even getting for those people, are they even qualified? So one, you're spending an absorbent amount of money there. You're investing in optimization. You're investing in, hey, I've got to learn how to play that game. I've got to invest in search engine optimization, all of those things. So again, that's the house that you're renting. You cannot say, I want to reach Mike. But you invest all your time and money and energy there. And then the house that you own, which is your email list, that's the core intellectual property that every business owns, is their list of people. That is your property. You can determine how you reach them, when you reach them, how often you reach them. But then everybody just thinks email's free. So what do? We have executives that think, hey, there's no cost to send email. I've already paid for HubSpot. We need more leads. We need more, activity. So let's just send more email. Well, there is a true cost to that. And really the real cost comes in as the cost of the attention of your recipient. And at the end of the day, we live in an attention economy. Just even think about your own personal life. from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to bed, there will literally be thousands of things that vie for your attention. And in the digital realm, that comes in the form of email, social notifications, text messages, Slack messages. Every website you visit, it's download this, attend this, look at this product, look at this promotion. If you do a Google search, what's Google doing? They're putting 5 ads to try and vie for your attention before you even get to the meat of that search. If you're on YouTube and you're surfing the web, Google's investing hundreds of millions of dollars in artificial intelligence every year to serve you up that next piece of content that they think you're going to like based off of your, viewing history. They're not doing that to give you a better experience. That's what everybody thinks. The reason why they're doing that is because the more attention that they get from you, ultimately, the more ads they can sell and ultimately increase their revenue.
Correct.
So as we come back to that kind of attention side of things, that's where it really goes full circle in treating the house that you own better and optimizing for that than you do your social your social world. So that was a little bit of a that.
Yeah. No. So how do we do that in the sense that you're saying that, okay, so I agree with you fully. First of all, I think once you've spent all this money on getting your list, especially if it's organic or if it's inbound, in the sense that people have reached out, they've agreed to give you their email, whether they're customers or they're leads or MQLs and so on. One, you need to treat them respectfully. 2, you need to add value and obviously send emails that, one, aren't spamming, but more is actually giving them value. So putting an email together, and then I don't think we're going to dive into the content side of it, because I think that is clear to everyone that if you're not sending out emails that are giving some kind of value and actually teaching and giving knowledge to that database, then obviously they're going to unsubscribe, they're going to go somewhere else, just like you said, the intention spam. So we might have a follow-up webinar around that, how to write the email, what type of email is engaging, and so on and so on. But I don't think we need to focus on that today, because I think that is something that's clear everyone needs to do, and the different tactics and strategies how to do that. But how do I, let me go into HubSpot for a second. Okay. So if I go into my HubSpot at the moment, why doesn't this allow me to? Okay. If I go into our HubSpot at the moment, I've got my marketing emails. Okay. Where I can just manage them. And obviously, I think everyone knows these: draft, scheduled, archive, and so on. I've got up here, if I've got the Sales Hub, I've got my sequences, and obviously those are going from my sales team through whatever emailer they're using. But HubSpot gives me this health, okay? So first of all, is this something that's worth looking at and saying, okay, this will be able to tell me what is my situation, where am I, as you said, kind of, how do I keep, as you put it, sounds correctly, how do I make sure that I keep my health, the health of my house and the starters base in a good, like, open rate, hard bounce, unsubscribe, spam report, and then it's giving me recommendations, first of all, on how to start cleaning these up and actually managing. So what you're saying is that, first of all, I need to be able to manage my health and make sure it's clean, make sure that everything is up to date, make sure that my database is good, so that when I send out my next email, I'm first of all going to increase the delivery opportunity and make sure that things go forward. Is that the things that you that would be the first step?
So first and foremost, the health tool is actually an incredibly valuable tool. And I was actually incredibly excited when HubSpot released this. But what I want to make sure everybody understands is there is kind of infrastructure that this is affecting. And everybody talks about a domain reputation, a domain score. Not everybody understands it, and especially it is one of the hardest things to explain to executives. And here's the way I explain. Hey, Mark, looks like you're on Slack. anyways, so the way I like to explain it to executives is you've got a credit score in your personal life, and that determines how much is a bank going to loan you. Are they going to loan you money? Under what circumstances are they going to loan you money? Well, if you just keep borrowing from banks and borrowing from banks, and you're in your early 20s, and then in your 30s, you decide, hey, I'm going to go buy a house. Well, the bank is going to go, well, you don't have a good enough credit score, so either we're going to loan you under terms that you don't, that are untenable, or we're just not going to loan you money. Well, the same thing holds true with your domain reputation, and every inbox provider has a different way of doing it. Google is different than Office 365, which is different than the free inbox providers. So all of them have their own algorithms. Billions of dollars are being invested yearly into combating spam. So in your credits or in your domain score, which is very similar, if you just keep sending lots and lots and lots of email, and people aren't paying attention to them, eventually Google, Microsoft, corporate filtering systems, other inbox providers, they're going to start saying, hey, we're just not going to loan you money anymore. Or we're going to loan you money under terms that are untenable, which means, hey, I'm just going to put you in spam. I'm still going to let you through, but your emails are all going to spam. So the reason why I really like this health, bringing it back, the reason why I really like this health dashboard is because it gives you a good snapshot of how you're, overall how you're performing. Like open rates, click rates, unsubscribes do not affect your domain reputation whatsoever. So there's a lot of pundits that say unsubscribes will affect it. Even clicks don't really impact your domain score. What really does is, are people opening your emails? Are they immediately deleting them as soon as they come in? How many times are they opening them? Are they forwarding them? Are they looking at, are they marking them as spam? Are they bouncing? Those are really the big things that contribute to your overall domain health and domain reputation. And so this is a good tool to look at it from a 10,000-foot view, and then determine, okay, is it time to invest in optimization techniques?
So what you're saying is that the difference between, as you brought up at the beginning, between delivered, where I can see maybe here that it's delivered in a specific email. If I go into, if I jump back for 1 second and go into the analytics of a specific email. So if I look at this email, I can see, recipients, and I can see sent, delivered, opened, clicked, bounced, unsubscribed. So not sent, I know, is a list of people that originally have either unsubscribed or they've hard bounced or so on and so forth. But what you're saying is that out of the 612 here, there might be a certain amount that have been delivered, not sent, but actually delivered, that if I'm with Outlook, or because Outlook now is Outlook 365, it's not only it's in the cloud now, so it's managed the same way. I'm assuming that Google manages Gmail for all of their customers, and I think you brought up that Salesforce is actually on Gmail itself as well. So you've got thousands of users, not only small businesses, it's big businesses.
HubSpot themselves uses Google Workspace as their
exactly.
Right.
So there's a good chance that it's dividing between 90% of it's being divided by Microsoft and Google. And they have the ability, based on what the user is actually doing, to kind of decide where the rest of your emails or where those emails are going forward. And that's what's actually defining, does it go into your inbox, or does it go into the promotion, or in a worst case goes into spam and so on, correct?
Worst case is it just gets quarantined, and it says that the email was delivered, but it didn't even make it to the spam folder. It's just literally sitting in a quarantine box that the only people that have access to that are administrators of the email system. But yes, you're absolutely right. So here's the way spam systems have really progressed. So initially they were really keyword centric, meaning don't put Viagra in your email. Like the word Viagra, because that's going to make the email go to spam. Don't put free in all caps. There's a lot of pundits on the internet that say, oh, keywords, or don't use this type of language. if you read that content, stop, because that is no longer a thing. There are hundreds of languages in the world today. There are billions of email users. They don't care about those types of words anymore. Those spam systems don't. Then it came down to your IP reputation. What is the IP reputation that you have? Meaning, is this IP clean that is sending me emails? Then we got into, okay, IPs are not as important and more now. So your domain reputation, is it a very strong domain reputation? And if so, I'm just going to let you through. That means I trust your domain. You're not a spammer. You're not doing malicious things. Well, now they've taken it even a step further and gotten incredibly sophisticated. And well, I'll ask a question. Have you ever noticed that one day a consumer-based brand makes it to your inbox, and then the next day they're in your spam folder, and then the next day their email is in your inbox? They might have the most pristine domain reputation, but the way that these spam systems work now is they're looking at the individual email. And for example, say I'm sending an email to 1,000 Google Workspace users, people that use Google Workspace as their inbox provider. What Google will do is when I blast that email to 1,000 people, Google will—
So hang on, I'm stopping you for 1 second because you explained something that I didn't understand. When you say 1,000, it could be 170 different companies that are all using Google Workspace.
That is exactly correct. Yep.
So it's not 1,000 people inside Penguin Strategies. It could be 1,000 different companies as well.
That is exactly correct. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. Thanks for clarifying that. So say I send this email to 1,000 people across, call it 1,000 different domains. Google is scoring people as far as like Mike is always in his inbox. Mike is like a person that is just always there, like constantly looking, cleaning things up, responding to emails, those types of things. So Mike is going to be part of a cohort that I test this email with. And there's 100 other people like Mike that are always in their inbox. So I'm going to place this email in those 100 people's inboxes, and I'm just going to sit there and listen. I'm going to listen very quickly to see if I get any positive signal or any negative signal. Negative signal could be people just immediately deleting that email as it comes in. Somebody marks it as spam, or positive signal is Mike opened the email and he had it open for 15 seconds. Well, if they get positive signal, what they'll do is they'll take the other 900 people across 900 different companies, and they will put those emails into the inbox. That's assuming that they don't have some type of sophisticated corporate filtering system like a Barracuda or Postini or something like that. So they'll take those other 900 people and they'll put those emails in their inboxes. But if they get any negative signal from those 100 people, they will then take the other 900 people and they will put them in the spam folder. They will put those 900 people's emails in the spam folder. So that's how sophisticated that it's gotten so microscopic that those are things that you really need to be considering when you're building a strong email program.
And they're able to do that, like when I click on send email, that all happens within a couple of minutes before the email, or in the back end, they're delaying the email and you just don't know about
it. They're replying back to HubSpot that this email was delivered. Again, it didn't bounce. But then what they're doing is they're looking at, and again, it's volume dependent. There's a lot of things that go into that, but you're absolutely right. They don't just immediately insert that into people's inboxes. Now, if you have a very small, like I'm sending it to 1,000 people, like, that's not going to be inspected as much as somebody that's getting sent, a domain that's sending tens of thousands of emails in a single blast.
So if we're focusing on email health, then what are the tips that you would get? Because I think I told you this as well. I'm getting questions from different customers like, okay, because I'm not 100% aware of what you just said, and I'm still in the phase before where I need to make sure that, I have a perfect domain credibility. So I don't want to mess up the domain that I have. So one is I'm going to go and buy another domain, which is close to mine, so I can take that list that I got from ZoomInfo, or because I am still using a cold list, what can we do? We still, have to get it. using a sequence maybe to send those out through my team, which anyway is through, in our case, through Google Workspace. But I don't want to take a chance. And then the second follow-up question I'm getting, okay, so I'll get that list. Maybe if I'm really know what I'm doing, we'll ping that list through some kind of credit system to see. I'll get a list of 1,000 people. I'll come up with 600 that I can actually email because they haven't left their work, because the email, at least I was able to ping them. So I know that they're still working there, because that's the one thing. And then I'm going to start warming up my domain. So first of all, what is that? And two, is that the right process today? What is the right process to actually try and make sure that I can get those emails going through, whether I'm trying to do a marketing email, which is kind of a newsletter going out to my current database, and maybe let's focus on how do I send out those cold emails without, harming my domain credit that I have, and is that even relevant today?
So it is, and it can certainly be done. So I'll walk you through what I personally know is the best practice. So the first being, okay, so say I buy a list of 1,000 people from, and you've already alluded to a lot of this. Say I buy a list of 1,000 people from ZoomInfo, or again, one of the other hundreds of list providers that are out there. The first thing that I would absolutely do is I would run them through some type of email verification software, whether that be Never Bounce, what is it, MailFloss. MailFloss is our favorite. That's what we actually use internally, just because they have a pretty slick integration with HubSpot. So run them through. Now, that being said, you've got to understand that just because MailFloss or Never Bounce told you that, oh, these emails aren't going to bounce, that's not actually 100% accurate. It is a first step to cleaning that list. All of these verification softwares work the exact same, where they are pinging those servers, but there's a lot of more sophisticated, like especially if you're going after a big corporation, those big corporations have accept all email addresses. So when they're pinging those email servers, they're not going to tell you that, yeah, Mike Donnelly 387 at the7cents.com doesn't exist, because that's how phishing attempts happen. Like, that's how real spammers do it. They'll start pinging and saying, hey, give me, just like if you want to do a password breach, you can, eventually somebody's going to knock you down for trying to do a password breach. But they can at least alleviate some of those incorrect email addresses. So that's kind of step one. Step two, on what I like to term burner domains, because that's essentially what you're doing. Again, everybody's trying to find, cracks in the system, but Google, Microsoft, and corporate filtering systems, I hate to tell you, they're smarter than us, or smarter than the people that are trying to put these hacks together. But you can still use burner addresses, but you have to be very, very careful, because even if you're using a burner address, they know how to tie that back to your primary domain. And if you're using that burner domain and you do something really bad there, then that can affect your primary domain. So that's why they say, like, you got to be careful in this world, because marketing can affect sales' ability to reach their customers, and sales can affect marketing's ability to reach their customers. But if you do decide to go down the burner domain route, one, you should ask yourself, why do I have to go down the burner domain route? Because I'm, in essence, spamming people. But you're absolutely right. It's really about starting very, very, very slow in those new domains. Don't start sending 50, 100 emails out of those domains every single day. Start with 5. Listen. Start with 10. Listen. Start with 15. Listen. And then really, if those burner domains are purely being used for cold email, I would not send more than 50 to 100 absolute max out of a burner domain daily. So it really comes down to quality over quantity. That's not going to get you in as much trouble.
So what I'm assuming is that if I'm not going the route of burner domain, I'm using my domain, then it's obviously the same recommendation. Do it slowly, make sure that you're not spamming, make sure that you've checked that list before as much as possible to see that it's not, because a lot of the time, you are putting lists from these different systems out there, and those lists are not like in the old days that it's just something that's actually bought, but people move on a daily basis. And I could email someone yesterday and it would have gone through, and then tomorrow the email was cut off because he just, 500 people in some company got fired. So you move forward, or in some cases, 12,000 people suddenly within 24 hours. So, and the emails are get, cut off immediately. That morning they wake up and they don't have their own email. So, okay, that makes sense. I want to touch on something else that maybe is more of relevant for some of our customers, and I think especially here in Israel and in the tech world. One is either you're a cybersecurity company, or more important, your customers are enterprise customers. And then we're getting feedback of the internal company spamming rules are hard bouncing all kinds of things, or soft bouncing, and they're stopping. Is there any way to deal with those situations where, a basic email to a customer is not even getting there?
Yeah, so that also leads a little bit to kind of like, one of the big buzzwords of 2021 and 2022, even though we've been doing it for a dozen plus years, which is account-based marketing. If you're doing any kind of account-based marketing or account-based sales, and if you don't have an email delivery strategy, especially when you're going after mid-sized to large enterprises, you just need to stop. Like it's not going to really matter what you do. Sure, you on social, maybe you can target 500 different mid-sized businesses, large enterprises, but you're just not going to have success in the email world unless you have that email delivery strategy. And what I'm really referring to there is what these systems will do is they'll go through a rate limiting process, and every company is different. And what rate limiting is, hey, I sent 10 people at Penguin Strategies an email all at the same time. I may have collected their email addresses through inbound, and all 10 of them raised their hand and said they were interested. But because I just sent 10 of the same emails at the exact same time, that kicks off a rate limit and goes, well, I'm definitely not letting you through. I'm either going to soft bounce you, or I'm going to put you immediately in spam. And so the solution there is to trickle those emails out so that they don't kick in that rate limiter, which will ultimately affect, your ability to inbox with those types of corporations.
Very interesting. So what you're saying is that the strategy that we've put in place, because like the strategy a few years ago would be try and make sure that the email gets to the inbox when the person is working and not at 12 o'clock at night if there's a time difference, because, it's easy for me. So let's make sure that it arrives at 10 a.m. or whatever time. We can talk a few minutes about what is the right time to get an email. I don't believe that exists anymore because people are on their phones and they're opening emails all the time. But at least if it arrives at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm sleeping, then obviously there are going to be few more emails in my inbox by the time I get there, and they're not going to see that. What you're saying is this is a different strategy. Is like, if I know that I'm emailing a customer that has 20 people that are in my database, I should make sure that I manage that correctly so that it doesn't automatically 20 go out at the same time, because that's going to push me and they're going to stop those emails coming through.
That is exactly correct. And what even you call into HubSpot support, and it's like, I have 25 people at this one company. They're actually a customer of mine. They've whitelisted my domain. We've gone as far as to talk to their CIO, and my emails still aren't getting there. It's because you're being rate limited. And so the solution there is trickle those emails out over X period of time versus blasting 25 all at once. So think of it as like a mini DDoS attack on those filtering systems. Got it. Okay. That's very interesting. I know for sure that, talking about Penguin, I'm sure we're doing the same mistake ourselves, but I know that we have customers that I've had that conversation virtually word by word, word for word, what you just said now, is that they've gone to that, they've spoken to the CISO of the customer
and try to understand why. And he's like, yeah, whitelist you and that. And then, either they're not giving full information or they're not interested in doing that anyway. But, and a lot of pushback I get, which makes sense, is like all the whitelisting and everything is like, I don't have that conversation. I have a conversation with the person in the department or people in that department. There's no way someone's going to waste their time and actually get me a meeting with a CISO, so our emails are going to go through, especially when I'm talking about enterprise customers. That's not going to happen. It's going to hang on a second. Oh, great. Penguin's selling to me. Let me have a conversation with them, make sure we whitelist their domain so that the email is going to come through, which obviously is a solution. But as you said, it might not even be a solution because anyway, that's going to the policy is going to trick in. So
So Perry, you actually bring up a very good point. So you think about a lot of enterprise organizations. Not only do they market to the outside world, they market internally. So they might send emails to their 500 sales reps out of HubSpot or Marketo or one of the other automation platforms. And then all the salespeople are like, I never saw marketing's email. Well, it's because the marketing team used that automation system to send out that blast. And they sent 500 emails, even though they were to an internal domain. And the emails either soft bounced or and we've seen this a ton as well. They either soft bounce or they get put in spam. It's because of those rate limiting systems. So it's not just external, it's also internal, and your internal domain is whitelisted across the board.
So there you're going to have to do the same thing as you said. Okay, make sure we send this email out to the entire company within the next 24 hours. Especially if it's more of an email that goes like a newsletter or something, it doesn't have to go out immediately. Make sure that we trickle that out so that it goes not one by one, but in small batches over that 24-hour period, so that doesn't happen either. Yep. Inside HubSpot, there is that do not send to unengaged contacts. Brandon Ring has asked this question, and I've had that, in the back end. I'll just show everyone what I'm talking about. But if I go into any email just before I send it out, and I move to send, this list at HubSpot, which is trying to prevent their domain, preserve their domain, obviously, because they're sending for so many customers. But you can choose here, either have it as a default or per email, go in and click on it. Is that something that you suggest using? How do I use that? What are the advantages of that?
So the advantage of it is that you're sending to, what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep your engagement rates at a higher level, which ultimately does impact your domain reputation, all of those things. What that is coming from is a property called Send Since Last Engagement. And it's an okay approach. Don't get me wrong. It is an okay approach, especially for kind of like, hey, I just want the easy button. I don't want things to think about. But there are some fundamental challenges with it. One, again, it comes from this rudimentary property called Send Since Last Engagement, which, quite frankly, got a little bit broke when Apple released mail protection privacy. But I can kind of live with that because opens aren't, it is what it is. The biggest problem with it is it's a blunt instrument. It's either I'm going to send to that portion of my audience or I'm not going to send to that portion of my audience. And unless somebody's a marketing unicorn on this on this Zoom conference, I have yet to see a company that doesn't use that feature. But then every once in a while, some executive will come and go, well, this is the CEO's message of the year. This email needs to go to everybody. So then we turn it off. Or, hey, it's our end of year push. We need to send this email out to everybody. So we're just going to turn that, we're going to uncheck that box. And that happens. What I liken that to is rolling a rock up the hill. Every time you use that feature, you're rolling the rock up the hill with regards to your domain reputation. You're keeping it higher. You're ensuring, you're increasing the odds probability that you're going to inbox. But then as soon as you turn it off, that rock falls all the way back down to the bottom of the hill with regards to your domain reputation. And the reason for that is you've just sent a big blast of negative signal to the internet in the form of bounces, complaints, low engagement, all of those things, because you haven't emailed that segment of your audience that just continues to grow and grow and grow for a considerable period of time. And like you talked about earlier, people are leaving their jobs all day, every day, or either through their own accord or through, unfortunately, layoffs. So we send that big blast of negative signal. Our domain reputation with that rock falls all the way back down to the bottom of the hill. Then we got to turn it back on. We use that feature. We roll that rock back up the hill. So it really becomes a game of whack-a-mole, is what I like to call it. So again, it's an okay approach if you're looking for kind of like that easy button, but it's definitely not the best approach. What you really want to be doing is cycling people in and out of your email program that are having lower engagement, so that you can keep that negative signal at a much lower level, that at a lower baseline, and that also keeps people engaged in your brand. So that's a little bit more about that the unengaged contacts component.
How do you actually do that trickling that we were talking about? What do I set up separate workflows with different times? Divide my list into. Someone's asking here: is there a way to automatically trickle the emails over time, or do you need to cut the list into chunks and then schedule each list blast at a different time?
So for those unengaged contacts, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. One is exactly that. You can chunk it up and say, okay, this is my A group, B group, C group, D group, and then include that A group with this week's newsletter, and the B group with next week's newsletter, and the C group with the following week's newsletter. I certainly don't want to be a commercial for 7 cents, but one of the things that we help do is we help automate that process. And we use a different approach, but again, I'm not going to sit here and be a commercial for our company.
Okay.
But there are ways that you can absolutely do it inside of HubSpot.
Inside of HubSpot, it's building out, and then or you look for a solution like you guys have, or any other solution that can automate that process and do that in a more structured way. Okay, great. I think that's very interesting. I wanted to ask another question. So again, I'm just showing, you can also jump in here and show, I think everyone is, as we said, the health is something that is worth looking at over time, performance by type, over time, email charts, and so on and so forth. The analytics obviously is something that I think is really helpful now, that you have that in one place and you can actually look at the delivery rate and go into email by email and actually send. One thing that I am seeing is that also it's a good idea to do kind of a re-engaged, but based on what you're saying, platform every once in a while where you make sure that a newsletter is going out, so you can actually test the waters kind of. But kind of what you're saying is, don't send out one email, maybe divide that into a couple of emails so that you don't harm, how going out. But then you can see on a smaller list how many people are actually engaged and interested. And when it comes to engagements, we were just talking about open emails for a second. Obviously, click emails. 2 questions of that. What's your make on open and click? And like, how do I say this is a good email or not? Besides, someone actually answering my email and then closing a deal, which is probably the best thing.
Yeah.
But I've also bumped into, and maybe we can touch on this first for 1 minute. We talked about this last week as well. A situation where suddenly you see that some person is clicking on all the emails, on all the clicks. And then it's like, hang on, there must be a bot here, or there must be some kind of filter. There's no ways that person went into my email, suddenly my click rate's gone up crazy, and actually clicked physically on my newsletter that has 15 clicks on it. So have you come across that? Do you have any solution for that?
Yeah, so that is a common problem, especially among enterprise type organizations that have deployed these sophisticated filtering systems, whether it be Barracuda or Postini or anything along those lines. And you're absolutely right; it is a bot clicking on those, and what you'll see is that those multiple clicks where they go and click every single link in your email. That is a real thing. One thing that you can test if you think that's a challenge is to take like, for example, you've got an email, take one letter in your email and put it in and like, say the word is from, take the R and put a link underneath the R to your website in case somebody actually did come across that, they're mousing over as they're reading your email. And then you can see who clicked on those links, and maybe you just create a separate like link penguinstrategies.com and push them to an article that's not even being promoted. And then anything that clicked on that link, you can tell those domains have these kind of sophisticated systems. And then you can exclude them from your results. That being said, HubSpot, and we are very, very close with HubSpot's postmaster. His name is Tom Monahan. His team is investing significantly in doing bot filtering. There is no silver bullet to this solution, because if there were, this is the way spams, if you think about professional spammers, what's the way, when you read about a company getting hacked and millions of dollars stolen or all private information getting stolen, how's that happening? It's happening through email. It's happening because of phishing attacks. So it's kind of like we're trying to play against those police. We're trying to break the laws against those police so that we can have better metrics. But that's one way that you can do it. But I can say HubSpot is investing significantly in, and they've actually got some really, really cool algorithms that they've built to identify bot clicks and fake opens.
So I can see it says bot filtering is on here. So that's obviously what you're talking about.
I can promise you there is a lot of code and intelligence behind that bot filtering, and it is only going to get better.
Interesting.
It's quite fascinating what they've been doing on the back end with that.
Okay. So we have two ways of sending out emails, and we've got a couple of minutes. We can dive into a few more questions if we have those. But one is obviously our marketing emails, which is the automated emails through the workflows. The other one is the batch emails that we can actually send out. And then the third, which is like your newsletters or so your auto responses will go through the automations. I'm assuming that the audience on this call knows what I'm talking about. And then obviously setting up those automated emails going through sequences, which either I'm using sequences or any other third-party system out there today, if I'm connecting to it, to automate that process. Just so it's clear to the customer, to everyone on the call, hopefully be customers at one time. No, I'm joking. But anyone on the call who's interested is obviously some of the advantages of the sequence is one is you help the sales team actually automate that process so they don't have to go in, send out an email, create a task, set it up, follow up, so on and so forth. But two is that it actually comes out, just so that everyone's clear, that email doesn't go out from HubSpot, correct? It goes out from whatever account that they've connected to HubSpot. So if it's Google or if it's Outlook or whatever else they've connected, what is that advantage, or is that besides the automation on the email delivery side? Is there any difference? Like, I want to send this email to the sequence, and then there's a good chance that will, or based on everything we talked, it doesn't make a difference. Talked about today.
Yeah, so it does make a difference. And I'm a huge fan of HubSpot sequences, the Sales Hub. I mean, there's a ton of other tools out there, whether it's Outreach or Sales Loft, whatever. But I know them all, and I stick with HubSpot because HubSpot's our CRM. And so you do have a higher chance, unless you've burned your domain, by sending from your corporate domain. It's a true one-to-one email at that particular point in time. But that's where it comes down to, hey, if you're sending out cold emails, like you really shouldn't be doing more than 50 per or 100 per domain or per account. And I know HubSpot has some limitations there of how many people I can enroll in a sequence.
500, yeah.
And part of the reason for that is because of the IP situation, where you can set up, even if you set up things like, and we haven't even talked about authentication, like when you have marketing emails with HubSpot, if you haven't set up your authentication yet, like you need to go do that today. Don't even send any more marketing emails until your authentication, especially at a minimum DKIM is set. Which is, long and story short, is you're authenticating that email to the internet and saying, hey, this is Penguin Strategies email. We take full responsibility for it. Because if you don't, you'll notice, like, if you're in your inbox, it'll be like from Mike at the 7cents.com via HubSpot.com. That's because you don't have your DKIM set. So
you're talking about going to the domains and URLs. Want to show everyone,
and make sure that
making sure that CNAME and text are set up. That's the first thing we do when we set up a customer. Yeah,
that is exactly correct. And so you've got this shared IP infrastructure coming from HubSpot that everybody is on, unless you have a dedicated IP, which that's a whole nother story, and something to be very, very careful of. But yeah, because it's coming from your Google Workspace or Office 365 account, when it comes to sequences, those just, as long as you haven't hurt your domain, those just have a better chance of being delivered, because they don't have certain tags and IPs that could be in trouble with certain organizations.
Okay, and another question here: any good resources to find out if your authentication is set up correctly? I'm not sure 100% understand that question. Maybe you do. I know that if it's connected and I send out an email that doesn't say via HubSpot, then I know it's set up correctly, correct? Or
yeah,
talking
so
about something else.
That's where I would go first, is to check that. There's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. There's a couple of tools out there from a company called Validity. They've purchased a bunch of like email companies. One of them being ReturnPath, and ReturnPath created this free tool called senderscore.org. If you're interested, Perry, I can send you a note with a bunch of, or I'm not sure who's following up here, either whether it's Perry or Mark. I can send you a note with a bunch of tools that you can look at that can cross-validate those types of things. That's
great. I think maybe we'll put a set of tools that we can come up with and have that as more information for the audience, and send that out to them, whoever's interested. That's great. Perry, I'm just double checking if there are any other questions that have come up. I think we've talked about sequences and marketing emails and what's important there. I think that is something that, as you said, what's interesting is that we have, especially when it comes to ABM, as you said, it needs to, one, if I kind of summarize what we were talking about, one is to set things up properly, make sure that you have the health. Obviously, on the DNS side, have that as your first step, and then make sure you have a strategy in place to make sure that the deliverability can match the strategies that you have to actually reach out to those people. Because on the one hand, email is free, and you have a database, but you don't want to abuse it, and you don't want to lose it. We haven't talked about GDPR and any of those things. I don't think we have time to talk about that too much. Just on a high level, are you seeing any difference? Obviously, the way I look at it, and I'd like to get maybe another 2 minutes around how you look at that. When it comes to California and the rest of Europe, it's, if I asked for something, this is not legal, obviously, advice at all, but this is the way I'm understanding it today. If I've asked for something like an autoresponder, I've asked for an ebook, obviously if I've unsubscribed physically, the system's not going to send me the ebook. But even if I haven't opted in, I should get that ebook, and there are different ways to get that. But nurture emails or newsletters or drip campaigns, which are more marketing emails that are going out, if I haven't opted in, I'm one of the European countries based on the GDPR rules, then I'm kind of running into, it's already been a couple of years now, but where suddenly my database as a marketing team suddenly has shrunk because I actually can't email those people.
So and like you said, definitely not professional legal advice here. I live in Washington, D.C., so all I'm surrounded with is lawyers. I do ask them these types of questions quite regularly. So GDPR, CCPA, all of these different regulations that are coming out, and I think we're just going to see increases. They're not really meant to go after organizations like ourselves, like a Penguin Strategies, 7 Cents, small to mid-sized businesses. It was more or less regulations to put in place against the, jerks of the internet, Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of these people that are collecting lots and lots of information and private information. That being said, like even cold emailing somebody in the EU is actually not illegal, as long as they look like an ideal customer profile, and that you can prove that this individual looks like an ideal customer for me, and that they could potentially be interested in my service or my product. It's actually okay to email them. You're not going to get your hand slapped. Yeah, they might make a complaint, but the EU is not going to come after Penguin Strategies for sending a cold email to Sarah, who Sarah got got all upset. It's just not going to happen. That being said, you do need to collect. You need to or make sure that you're following the processes of, hey, this is the reason why I'm contacting these people. And HubSpot has made that actually very easy of saying, hey, this is why I'm opting this person in. They look like, there's potential legitimate interest, those types of things. But that's my 2 cents on GDPR. So I know when GDPR first came out, everybody would think the world's going to explode. We're never going to be able to market. We're never going to be able to email people. And look, I'm not against cold emailing. Like, hey, we're all trying to grow our business here, and we only have so much money that we can spend on inbound, and inbound takes a lot. So you need to be doing both, is what it comes down to, but do both smartly. So as far as GDPR is concerned, like, I don't want everybody to continue to go down that route of freaking out of like, oh, I can never try and grow my business through email, because that's not the thing. You just need to be cognizant that, hey, emailing is getting harder, and I don't want to crush my ability to email not only prospects, but also my customers.
Got it. We do have a last question here that I think we're going to have time for, which is a very interesting one, because I didn't think of this one. HubSpot has a call to action where it's actually a piece of code that I can choose inside. Does that have any negative impact on the deliverability, or should I just use a basic URL with an image?
Are you referring to smart content?
No. I mean, I can use it for smart content. I think I'm referring more to, so I open an email, and inside the email itself, I have 2 options. I can either just add an image, or I can use the CTA. Okay, so this is the HubSpot CTA. So correct, if I go into the call to action, is there any difference between me doing that or me creating, just a piece of code?
There really isn't. Now, that being said, like if your emails are getting inspected a lot more and you've got a poor domain reputation, then your emails might get inspected more. But those types of content things don't typically make any difference. It is something you could certainly test, because maybe having a CTA like that versus plain text versus rich text versus HTML, Maybe your audience is different. Those are all things that, you know, are worthwhile in testing. And that's kind of an easy thing to do. I mean, writing content is the hard part. Like some of these infrastructure that you've spent hours thinking about a strategy, hours building the campaign, but then everybody just wants to press send. Like, it's like you've done all of this work and now you're just going to take the easiest path to pressing send. But long story short, no, it shouldn't really make any difference whatsoever, as far as the spam and spam systems are concerned.
Got it. Perry, are there any other questions that I didn't see that are coming through? We kind of gone.
We are out of time.
To the end of the hour.
We email us any other questions you have. Thanks, Mike, for joining us again. And this was an interesting one. There are a lot of follow-up questions. We'll try to get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, again, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for attending. And next time I'll be sure to wear my costume. There we go. And in 2 weeks we're doing it hybrid. So those of you who can make it out to the Penguin office, welcome. And the rest will be online. Bye till next time.
Thank you very much, Mike.